Olá, boa noite a todos. Eu vou só avisar que essa entrevista será toda em inglês. Scott Horton, thank you very much for being back on Liberin.
Thank you very much for having me. Good to be with you.
Thank you. I feel truly grateful and honored. Your previous participation received excellent acceptance within the most active segment of the Brazilian libertarian scene. Unfortunately, we are not many in number, but we make it up for it in quality. To support my statement, I would like to introduce you to Roberto Chiocca, a libertarian who, together with his brothers, brought libertarianism to Brazil in the late 1990s and early 2000s. In 2007, they founded the Mises Institute Brasil, which unfortunately was taken over by no libertarians. Roberto and his brothers stepped away and founded the Rothbard Brasil Institute, which remains the most reliable Portuguese language libertarian site. I came to know your work through the Rothbard Brasil Institute. Roberto will be our host today and will lead the interview. Thank you. Thank you. And sorry for my bad English.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the introduction, Priscilla. Yeah, Scott, it's an honor to be here and talk to you finally. I've been an admirer of your work and your amazing intelligence for many, many years now. And I hope we can have a great conversation. I hope I can push boundaries and make you say things talk about things you not usually talk about, or maybe push you to look more to other areas of the U.S. foreign policy as well. So I will start the talking about asking you questions about Brazil, because of course we are in Brazil, and U.S. is hugely an influence, and if not owner of this land. So I'll ask you the first question. So Brazil is heavily influenced by everything that happens in the United States. In general, those who consider themselves to be more politically engaged and right-leaning have a very negative view of Russia, Islam, and China, and a very positive view of Israel, US, and the European Union. How does American cultural and media imperialism shape these perceptions, in your opinion, even among people who claim to be critical of the state? Even some libertarians have this CIA view. So how this empire formed this in Brazil and elsewhere?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I mean, I don't know enough about how things are in Brazil and how the media situation is there and all that, and what different reasons people have for that. I mean, I'm a defender of, for example, the Iranian government against lies told about it, like it's building nuclear weapons every day for the last 25 years and this kind of thing. But I carry no brief for the regime overall. I don't know why, or the Chinese regime for that matter. I don't see them as, better than the United States in any important way or whatever, other than they haven't been launching aggressive wars the way we have. But like overall, if the Chinese, for example, are increasing their influence in Brazil, is that in a corrupt type way to achieve their interests at the expense of the people there? I don't know. If that's where people are getting their negative perception from, the bribes being passed around and resources being extracted, then that could be a problem. I mean, if you're telling me it's just because the TV says this is the axis of evil and this is the axis of heroes and people are buying it, then, I don't know about that. But I think Look, the United States, the national government in Washington, D.C. is the most destructive force on the planet. While also at the same time, for example, regulating in favor of freer trade most of the time, which is to the benefit of most people. One of the great excuses for the American empire really is that the countries that are at least part of it and under the so-called security umbrella of the United States, they don't fight amongst themselves because that would jeopardize their position in our overall thing. So the only problem is everybody on the outside of that ends up being on the outside of a extremely powerful military alliance that, in fact, as we can see, threatens them if they don't do what the American empire wants them to do. So you could always find good arguments if you zoom in. We're like, if you ask someone in Pango, would you prefer to be dominated by the United States or China? Because those are your only two choices. They may very well choose the United States because that's what it means to be a small, weak country and to always have your fate determined by larger, more powerful ones. And now you're choosing between larger, more powerful ones. So, for all its brutality, the American empire is not the most brutal in even recent memory. You know what I mean? So, the communist empire, I was a teenager when it fell and they were way worse. So, and look, overall in the world, the Chinese fly a big red flag. So if much of the problem with your economy in your country is all the socialism and you're trying to break free of that and free up your economy and increase prosperity and freedom there, then it would make sense that in the overall scheme of things, America's to the right of China there. On the other hand, look at America's war against Russia. We're the left-wing force there trying to force our domino theory on conservative red, white, and blue Christian Russia, while America is the much more commie actor in the situation, So depends, what you're looking at and how you analyze it. My point of view is, and I know that to a lot of other Americans, maybe this just sounds naive or whatever, but in fact, I would even invoke Brazil as an example. Brazil's a pretty big country. It's what they call like a seam state or a mid-ranking power or something like that. Brazil does not have a giant navy that they use to go around bossing everyone else around. They don't jump into every fight in the world. They don't spend all their people's last resources on intervening in everybody else's conflicts. Yet nobody castigates Brazil for being isolationist and closing itself off from the world like North Korea or something, because it's not that. Just because you're not at war all the time doesn't make you an isolationist. I would prefer to have a Brazilian foreign policy where I would prefer the freest trade, which is not exactly the Brazilian tradition, but at least when it comes to foreign interventionism and forcing other countries' markets open, like Brazil's, for example, or anyone else's, I'd be totally against that. Keep the Navy at home. Let everyone in the world know, yes, America is a strong nation. Don't you dare attack us. But otherwise, no, really, we mean it. We are not coming for you. And we recommend liberty because it works best, and let us show you. And then even if you just think of the post-Cold War era, where we've expanded this empire into Eastern Europe and in the Middle East. And, luckily we've left Latin America more or less alone compared to earlier eras, at least in this recent time. But you look at all the money wasted, all the lives wasted, and all the opportunity costs and all the bad will spread when in this whole time, there was no major power rising to challenge us. I don't know, you guys are down there, but I'll tell you this. When the Soviet Union fell around here, they were saying, oh no, maybe Japan and Germany will rise again and conquer the world now. Come on. In other words, we'd already made friends with communist China back 15 years, 17 years before the fall of the Soviet Union. Now the Soviet Union's gone. We could spin the whole globe. We've got no enemies. We've got no even potential rivals. We have no power that opposes. There are no powers in Latin America or Africa. Every nation in Europe is our friends. Now we're friends with the Chicons too. India is completely bankrupt on their butt. They're not doing anything to anybody. Japan, of course, are our bestest friends since the Second World War. They're not going anywhere. And then now you spin the world. You're all the way back at North America again, right? There's nobody coming. There's no reason in the world that America had to hold the world at bay, because there was no power on earth that was threatening anyone at that time. So it's perfectly reasonable to say that everyone in charge was wrong and stupid and did the wrong thing. They should not have expanded the empire into the Middle East. They should not have expanded the empire into Eastern Europe at all. They should have come home even from Germany and Japan, England, and everywhere else, and just said to the world, look, man, this is how you do it. Save money by not intervening and not weighing your economy down with militarism. Protect the rights of your people to own property, be free, and trade in it. And then watch prosperity bloom. And in fact, that is the history of the last 30 years, only just with all these horrible exceptions, right? Like you can see where like true extreme starvation has been abolished from almost everywhere in the world, except where America is helping Israel starve people to death or something like that. But in most other places, market economics have destroyed the famine, right? You can have very bad weather, but markets will deliver food to where the bad weather was, you know. And in this period, the most extreme kind of poverty has been almost eliminated from the face of the earth. Again, other than, you know, Palestinian refugee camps everywhere, and you know, in the heart of the fighting in Donetsk. But otherwise, capitalism is working for the world, right? If you look at like the overall GDP of the planet, it just goes like this once communism is out of the way and people start trading. But then the big asterisk, right? The big exception is that when America completely destroys Afghanistan, Iraq, destroys a third of Pakistan, completely destroys Somalia, completely destroys Libya, Syria, and then you have just these massive setbacks, and including massive setbacks for the entire American way, not just the bad part, right? And this is the worst thing about W. Bush. Well, no, it's not. But other than all the violence, was he said that's freedom. He goes, this is what it looks like when America sets you free. And then he sets some child on fire. And people go, oh my God, that's freedom? Here, we blow up your mosque. That's what happens when America comes to fix you right up good. And so people react completely against that, of course. And so then the very best part of the American tradition of freedom, which George W. Bush, in a way, only slightly had a moral responsibility to spread rhetorically, he completely destroyed by spreading it kinetically or using it as his excuse to fight wars, you know, Israel, you know, for Israel, basically, was Iraq War II, and at the expense of the American people, at the expense of even the basic message of freedom. I mean, there's probably no greater setback for the message of liberty in the world than George W. Bush opening his mouth while he's pulling his triggers. That whole 8 years long, back 20 years ago.
Yeah, and even his campaign was, I think Leo Rocco has a text from one of his speeches on his campaign, George W. Bush. You might confuse him by a libertarian when he was campaigning. Yeah, and also I think Gerald Salente, he says, China's business is business and U.S. business is war. So that's why China is taking over the world. And China is no longer communist. They still have the flag and the name, but they are the most, I recently visited them, and they are the most capitalist country I've ever been. It's amazing how free people are and how developed they are right now.
God, that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
That is just humiliating. You know, seriously, for a Texan to have to sit here and hear a guy from a third country go, well, I've been to China and man, they're freer than you are. Like, oh man, really? Big red flag in a one-party state, notwithstanding, it's still nothing like the police state you live under in America there. Sheesh.
Yeah, I didn't have to take my shoes off to board a plane there. So, yeah. So that brings me to another question. This is just to get to know what you really know about Brazil, and what level of knowledge do you have about the current President Lula and the former President Jair Bolsonaro regarding foreign policy, regarding their foreign policy?
Oh, very.
Because they're opposite.
No. I ask you, you tell me. I don't know.
Yeah, the current President Lula has what we call more libertarian foreign policy, to even being hit the commie and the thief and a criminal. He has foreign policy that denounced the genocide in Israel, and he tries to stop the war he says, by drinking beer with Zelensky and Putin. He would try to end the war. But while Jair Bolsonaro is more Zionist, and he had a more hostile foreign policy towards China, but when he was running, but he changed that. He adopted a more peaceful policy towards China when he recognized China being one country. While campaigning, he was for the secession of Taiwan, but then he recognized one China. So we do have Lula being more the peace foreign policy than Bolsonaro. Of course, Brazil has no chance of getting to wars. Our army is a shame. It doesn't serve for paint sidewalks. They don't. They are.
That's
but
great.
Yes. It's good, but
you're really lucky. That's fantastic.
But they are still powerful enough to arrest people using perfidy. When the protests of the fake coup happened here in Brazil on the January 8th, ours was January 6th, and ours 2 years later was January 8th. Mm-hmm. They arrested people using perfidy. The people was camping in front of HQ, military HQ, and they said, "Oh, we are just surrounding this camp just for your safety." And then they made people enter buses, saying they were going to just take them to a safe place when they took them to be arrested. Some of them are arrested until today. It's been, I think, almost 3 years now. And those people are still in captivity, kidnapped by this hostile government that we have here. So Brazil is in a terrible dictatorship now, even Lula being kind of good on the foreign policy. He's ashamed. He raises taxes. He is fighting to take all our liberties away, and he didn't win the election. He was put there by the CIA and the US aid, and this fake coup helped him to make his narrative more strong. This is a short explanation of what Brazil is living right now. We have the Supreme Court that is very rogue, and they complete disregard for the Constitution. It's terrible situation what's happening in Brazil.
They arrested children and dogs too.
Oh yeah, they arrested even children. Yeah, child and dogs on this perfidy. When they used this perfidy to run the camping, they took old people, sick people, Indians, First Nations here, and children and dogs.
Now, so I guess you would say, two things. First of all, you said, I believe if I heard you right, that this really was sort of a USAID color-coded revolution thing to get rid of Bolsonaro and put Lula back in there. Is that what you said? I hear you right? Yeah,
and it was in the open. Even the CIA director came to Brazil to threat Bolsonaro not to, before the elections, Bolsonaro not to doubt the election system. They did do that in the open. It was widely spread in the news, in the mainstream news, the mainstream news. They did that. And also after that, and even while that was happening, I was seeing that happening, but I'm too aware, but people are not. But after that, Mike Vance even pointed out and showed the proof of the involvement. And everything's in the open now. Everyone has access to that information, and this is not like a conspiracy theory, not something you can only find on sites like Billrock or antiwar.com, but it is.
Well, we might have covered it at antiwar.com. I don't
remember if it covered.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. So then, well, that's unusual then, right? If the USA is backing a coup to overthrow the left-leaning guy, or pardon me, to overthrow the right-leaning guy and help the left-leaning candidate win, that might be a first in all Latin American history, right?
Yeah, sort of. But it's. I have some explanations on why they would do that.
It was that commie Joe Biden, right? That's why.
Yes, that's one side of it. That maybe the lefts were together in that. So Bolsonaro was the preferred one and friends with Trump, so they didn't want to get rid of him. Bolsonaro was also against the fake fraudemy that we have. So he was against vaccination, forced vaccination. He was against lockdowns. He didn't wear masks often. So and also on the Trump side, because when Trump got elected again, he seemed to be very friends with Bolsonaro and his son. So he took some measures. Yes, he took some measures against the rogue Supreme Court. He put the law against the sanction against the Supreme Court most rogue and most famous judge, which is Alexandre de Moraes. But that lasted not long. That was completely ignored by the Brazilian government. And recently he removed that. And there is an explanation for that, which I think is plausible. Because if they insist on that and bring Bolsonaro back, Bolsonaro, I believe he really loved his country. He was honest. He was not corrupt. So I believe he was a more fierce negotiator than Lula is. Lula is very corrupt. So Lula has a price, and Bolsonaro does not, at least seems not to have a price. He doesn't have a case of corruption like Lula has. Lula is widespread and known. He was even arrested for corruption. Well,
and then going back before that, didn't Glenn Greenwald show that Lula had been sort of framed and set up to be run out of office the first time? Because I think I remember him sort of regretting helping getting the guy out of jail, because then when he came back to power, he was so horrible on everything. And Glenn was like, well, what can you do, you know?
Yeah, what Glenn revealed was not enough, in my opinion, to revert the situation. It was just like the judge and the prosecutor, they were speaking. So that's something, but that doesn't make all the proof and the corruption that we saw evaporate. That still exists, that still is there, and the measure to just release Lula and cancel war, his condemnations, it's not a valid one. It's too much for that. So no, I don't think that was enough. And also it was selective. What Greenwald showed, he had terabytes of hacker breach of many people, and he just showed some things that would jeopardize that case. Some people, some journalists here, they say that they had, because it was not just Glenn, it was his previous company that did that, the Intercept, I think. So they had something that they would call some journalists, and they would go to a room, they could search everything on those terabytes, but they could not take pictures or anything like that. And this journalist, she says that they were doing that because they knew the journalists would, the first thing they would look for was what they had on them. So they would be quiet and they would be on their pockets now because they had on everyone. So I like what Blaine do sometimes. I think he's very good in some points, but I don't know. I don't trust him very much, even him being so great on some issues like the Israel issue right now. But I don't know. I don't think that.
Was there an obvious, at the time, was there an obvious explanation? Did it seem like why he was releasing some things but not others?
And I don't think they, yeah, of course, they always have this journalism. Why would they release something on somebody who is not being persecuted, who is not maybe that a public figure or something like that? But I don't know. You have to ask him why he did.
Yeah, I should. I admit I didn't pay enough attention to that case when it came out, just because Brazil is kind of far away from what I'm usually paying attention to. So I did I think I read over it when it all came out, but I didn't really study it very deeply, so I don't really know who the players at stake are and all that stuff. But
yeah, it was a shame because we finally had some justice. We finally saw a real corrupt criminal going to jail, the head of, or what the public head of the mafia going to jail. And then that didn't last so long. And Bolsonaro also, he didn't try to do what he had to try to do. And ironically, that's why he's in jail now, because they say he tried to do something to revert this, but he did not. He just was quiet. And he always say, I'll play in the 4 lines, like I'll play in the field with the rules. But he was the only one doing that. The Supreme Court was not doing that. His enemies were not doing that. Even his people below him, and that was supposed to be his trust man, they were not playing that game. Only Bolsonaro was playing within the law, and he's now in jail in a very corrupt case with total disregard for the law. The opposite, it's crimes crimes after crimes that the Supreme Court committed in the open. They don't even pretend. I believe they want to make sure it is it's clear for everyone that it is an injustice, that the laws are gone in Brazil and this mob owns it, and we can do nothing about it. Yeah. Okay. So I have another question. So recently on the podcast, part of the problem of your friend and one of my idols, Dave Smith, you discussed the possibility of U.S. invasion of Venezuela. And then I believe more, Dave, than you were arguing that even while rejecting a local dictator, the population would likely take up arms if a foreign power like the United States intervened militarily. However, the reality in Brazil, and I believe the Venezuelan reality might be very similar, seems to be exactly the opposite. In Brazil, I'm sure about it, a significant portion of the population would probably support or at least not resist an external intervention led by the United States to remove a political elite widely perceived as corrupt and authoritarian. Ironically, a regime sustained only thanks to decades of US financial, diplomatic, and institutional support. In this context, would the United States have a legitimacy to correct a regime they themselves helped install and keep in power? Or does this logic reveal a vicious cycle in which the only way to remove a dictatorship funded by billions from the CIA, US aid, and allied structures would paradoxically be through even more billions from the very same institutions that created?
Yeah, man, just give me one more hit, No, listen, the best solution to all this stuff is to call off all American intervention. And, if your leftist leader is so bad that you want America to come and solve the problem for it, then one, boy, you really got a problem that you need to focus on solving immediately if it's really that bad. But two, you might have forgotten to ask yourself, then what? When you invite the devil in to come and solve your problem for you, well, he's going to stay, and then you're going to lose your sovereignty. Whatever independence Brazil has as a medium power state could be lost. You could just become another bureau at the U.S. State Department with a sock puppet dictator does whatever he's told, which may be the case now that Lula really just is in the State Department's pocket. But then is that what you want to do? Like when the Democrats are in power, USA does a coup. And then when the Republicans are in power, I don't know, they just bankroll a guy or whatever, help him win. And then when the Democrats get elected, they do a coup. Maybe they ask the Republicans to go ahead and invade, put a Marine beachhead in Rio. We'll go ahead and do a full regime change. And then we'll wait until the Democrats win again. And then we'll do another USA color-coded thing. Man, enough, right? You don't want that. You don't want America solving the problem that they created. And I mean, hell, they helped to encourage the rise of Castro in Cuba. If you want to go back to the 50s, the State Department said this guy's not really a commie. He's more of an agrarian reformer type. Hell, they said the same thing about Mao Zedong when they're leaving, making sure essentially that the commies were getting, more of the aid that they were supposed to be sending to Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists in the Civil War, So I think, I had a bumper sticker years ago. It said the Council on Foreign Relations, creating enemies and destroying them since 1921. So, I think what you want to do probably is just, like with a vampire, you just do the cross and say, get and just stay away from me, man. Demons out.
Yeah. But I'm sure most of the Brazilian population would applaud and join the U.S. Army if they decide to invade or nuke Brasilia. That would be a blast for us.
They tried to do a coup in Venezuela in 2019, I guess, the Juan Guaido coup. And they turned out a few thousand people, maybe even 10,000 people or something to protest for the right. But the leftists turned out hundreds of thousands of people. Basically, all the Indians, all the poor Indians came out with their red hats to support Maduro. And I can never find this again. I'm 99% sure it was on Max Blumenthal's Twitter feed where he had tweeted or posted where it was drone footage over the crowds. And it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people all surrounding the presidential palace, not to sack it and force the guy out, but rallying to protect the president, to make sure that the coup would fail. And that doesn't mean that Maduro is a good leader, but it means that at least his politics are, he cares about these poor Indians, and the right wingers' politics are, they don't give a damn about these poor Indians. And they know that. And so, that doesn't mean that Maduro has better economics, but if it was me, I would fight for independence first. I can't imagine a situation, no matter who's in charge of the United States of America, where I would welcome a foreign power coming and doing a coup or an invasion to overthrow, particularly with military force, to come and overthrow my government and install a new, better government for me? No way. And I hate the government, man. I'd have loved to see anybody overthrow Bill Clinton or George Bush or Barack Obama, or for that matter, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, but not foreigners, man. This is America. And same thing there, dude. You got a problem with Lula, you better solve it. And don't you give Uncle Sam an excuse to solve it for you, because you'll regret it.
Yeah, maybe because the U.S. seems to be a sovereign country. Brazil was never, and U.S. is in charge, and they do bad things. They might be not so bad, right? Why give me 10 slashes? Give me 5 only. I would be happy with that. Not me. I'm a libertarian. I'm just supposing.
Yeah,
but
no,
the people might think.
It sounds like what you're saying is that essentially, from y'all's point of view, Brazil is really just a state in the Union anyway, right? Like you're going to be under the power of Washington no matter what. So it's not really different than if Washington came and did a regime change in Texas, because even though they don't really have the power to choose our governor, but like we had a really, really bad governor, then they would. But you're saying essentially, like you've already resigned yourselves to that position. Brazil might be big on a map, but as a medium power state, you're nothing compared to the American superpower. And it's always been that way. We did a coup over there in '64. I don't know how many coups before that or since, but I know that was a particularly bad one. So that's what you're telling me, really, is that you accept your status as just another Louisiana or Arkansas in our union. And so what the hell difference does it make? If Uncle Sam is going to install this guy, well, then at least please install this guy because we like him better. That's what you're telling me.
But that's the reality. That's the reality of Brazil.
And I'm sorry. It's not supposed to be that way. That's horrible, man. That's horrible.
We have no means against the empire.
I understand. Right. You don't.
We have no means against the empire. Brazil is surrendered. And even Bolsonaro was surrendered. He didn't question the interrogation of the elections after the CIA came to that. He just was quiet. He didn't say a word. So Brazil is subject of the empire. We're hostages of the empire. And this situation currently was created entirely by the US. People voted and protested for Bolsonaro in droves. There was never anything like Bolsonaro's popularity in Brazil. I never saw something like that. His protests were millions of people in the streets, while Lula can take more than 10,000 people to the streets. In Venezuela, I also saw that. Even Corina Machado being a CIA asset, she was able to bring way more people than Maduro brought. Even if you saw many people there, Maria Corina Machado and the people against Maduro brought many more people to the streets, even with the threats. What?
When was that exactly?
Recently. I think it was last year or this year. I don't remember exactly, but usually that's what happens. The protests against the government here, and I mean, for the right wing or against this communists, is bigger than the other ones. Venezuela is that. Brazil showed that as well, and other countries that I can tell, like what happened in Argentina, the people fed up with the commies. So we bring, while the left, usually those protests, they bring people that are on their payroll, or they are just paid to go there to those protests. It's not spontaneous. And I'm total pro sovereignty. I'm a anarcho-capitalist. I'm a Hopian, but we need to, like you do, we need to deal with things as they are. Brazil is not a sovereign country. I don't know if it's ever been. I think some time ago it was, but I didn't see that country. I was not born yet when Brazil was sovereign. Maybe when it was an empire, we were sovereign, but not anymore. So let me bring another question to you. So I guess, again, Brazil, I think it's the last I will have about Brazil. Bolsonaro supporters believe that Donald Trump supported the so-called Brazilian right. But recent decisions, as I told you, the removing of the Supreme Court leader from the Magnitsky Act sanctions seems to have changed this perception for some, which is good. Many still believe the US are good guys, even though they installed and now effectively gave carte blanche to this current dictatorship in Brazil. Was it merely chance that the US sided with justice in this case, confronting a real criminal, a dictatorial judge, a regime that truly violates human rights? At the same time, the US supports a genocidal war criminal like Benjamin Netanyahu, bombing people worldwide. And so, how can we help the Brazilian public wake up to the fact that Brazil is not a sovereign country, but effectively a property of the US empire, and that the empire itself is the greatest global villain?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, good question. I mean, sort of like we were talking about at the beginning there, where the empire does rule in favor of freer trade, right? And it makes sure that Hungary doesn't get into a big border dispute with Slovenia, right? And break out in violence, whatever. So people will look at those things and in the scheme of things, maybe decide that that's the best of the alternatives available. But I would say, first of all, yes, it is a coincidence. When America has a Brazil policy that is good for the people of Brazil, that only is because it's good for whatever special interest, whatever narrow interest in America decided it was good for them. And then it was coincidentally good for you guys too. I know that historically, at least, I don't know the current state of it really. I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but I know that historically Brazil had a very protectionist trade policy. So if America comes and says, listen, you want to do business with us, you have better lower these tariffs and all of this, and we bully Brazil into lowering their tariffs, well, that's good for Brazil. You know, maybe a little protection here or there if you believe in some kind of national economic policy. I don't, but like overall, the lower the tariffs, the better for the people of Brazil. So, because it's not all this trade deficit stuff. It's in real capitalism, the consumer is king, and you want the customer is king. You want prices to go down and increase people's standard of living. And so, but did anybody in Washington wake up in the morning and say, you know, it'd be really good for the people of Brazil if we were to help them have lower tariffs? Right? That was never the conversation. The conversation was, you know how we could get something out of them for an advantage? Pick up the phone and threaten to kill them if they don't do what we say, right? That's how business is done in Washington. So, so you might appreciate it some of the time, but always, you know, take it with a grain of salt, or at least, you know, with some skepticism as to why the Americans are doing something, because it's not that they care. And then, so overall, then, you know, look, I don't know why this should be a difficult argument to make to anyone in Latin America that the United States is the greatest threat to their independence, their prosperity, their standard of living, their liberty in any way. Who else is coming for you? The Chi-Coms are going to come and what, conquer, take over, settle, transfer their population to South America and overrun you guys? Like, I don't think that's really going on, right? Like there's no naval power that's threatening you. There's nobody threatening you. So, you know, I don't know really, like, even hypothetically, why you need America to keep anyone else at bay, right? If we leave Latin America, who fills the power vacuum? Probably Brazil, right? Is the biggest country in Latin America, the wealthiest country in Latin America. And y'all don't seem to really like throwing your weight around and dominating your other neighbors down there anyway. So great, right? Like, what's the problem? Why can't we just have peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations and entangling alliances with none, right? I mean, in 300 years, maybe Brazil will be a militarist power that goes around lording it over Uruguay or whatever. But like right now, I don't think that's a problem that anyone needs to worry about. So, and who else is coming? The Brits are coming. The Portuguese are coming back. You know, nah, y'all are fine.
Yeah, when Trump put the tariffs on Brazil, Lula said he would reciprocate. But we were just hoping he did, because our tariffs are way higher than the ones Trump put on us. Right. Everything here is like 100% tariffs or more. And Trump was just putting 50%. Yes, please, reciprocate.
That's funny. Yeah. In other words, lower Brazilian tariffs to match America's new increased ones. That's funny.
Yeah, that would be great. But that didn't happen. Okay. So now let's change to Russia versus Ukraine. I have just one question regarding that, because I think you talk a lot about that, and you're amazing, and I think you've covered almost everything on that. And thank you for doing that, because this is was much needed. It was a big lie, right?
Sure.
So in Brazil, there is a popular YouTuber who calls himself a libertarian, but has fully absorbed the mainstream CIA-backed narrative of the Ukraine war. He has apparently never heard of antiwar.com, the Libertarian Institute, the Mises Institute, the New Rockwell website, or leading libertarian thinkers like you, Hans Hermann Hoppe, David Stockman, Ron Paul, or even the Zionist Walter Block, all of whom explained from the beginning that Russia was provoked and faces a proxy war against the US. Because of these YouTubers' popularity, most Brazilian libertarian sympathizers, equally uninformed, support Zelensky's regime and attack us, our institute, when we present the official libertarian position on this conflict. Mm-hmm. What would you say to this YouTuber and his followers?
Well, first, I would suggest that you look and see if he's financed by the Atlas Network and part of the State Department, NED, Cato Institute alliance, where they go around, dressing imperialism up in libertarianism. This does happen from time to time.
No, he's not. He's not one of the Catos. No.
No, not tied with Tom Palmer and the Atlas guys.
No, not really.
All right. Well, then I guess he's just a fool. I don't know what to say. Liberal Democrats tell him what to think, and then he repeats that. How embarrassing. I mean, what a bunch of crap that Vladimir Putin, who'd been in power for 25 years, 22 years, woke up one morning and decided to expand Russia's border to the West, no matter the cost to his relations with the rest of Europe and the United States, who he's been sucking up to this entire time. As any analyst of Russian foreign policy would have noted over the last generation, his policy was always the accommodationist policy toward the West. As he told Madeleine Albright, hey, I like eating with chopsticks, but I mean, come on. We're part of Europe. We're Christians. And we might be the eastern frontier of European civilization, but we are part of the West, ultimately. And that was always his orientation. And the only reason that he did what he did in Ukraine was because, one, there was a 7-year-long ongoing unresolved civil war in the East, even though our allies, the Germans and French, had negotiated the peace deal to end the thing. Obama had rubber stamped it, and the UN Security Council had rubber stamped it. And then Obama's government and Trump's government made sure that the Poroshenko and then Zelensky governments did not implement that peace deal and made sure that the war continued. And as we now know from Yahoo News, Zach Dorfman, and the way, way, way after the fact gigantic piece in the New York Times from 2023, that the CIA was there running the war for Kiev the entire time and had even 14 bases inside Donetsk and Luhansk, where they were helping the Kiev side to fight that war, just like in the Russian accusations. And then secondly was the ongoing and repeated and explicit threat to bring Ukraine into America's military alliance, and including the de facto inclusion of their military with NATO in what they called the program of interoperability, making sure to completely revamp their entire command and control structure and their weapons, and especially, more and more try to swap out their old Soviet-based military with a new Western-based one. And so then even without official NATO membership, the idea is that in the event of a war between NATO and the Russian Federation, the Ukrainian military would have been just another auxiliary military fighting with NATO, just like Hungary and Lithuania and Germany and Poland and the rest. And even if they don't have an Article 5 war guarantee of protection for them, that they would still be under interoperability and the rest, part of the West's alliance against the Russian Federation, which the Russians had expressed for decades was absolutely intolerable, and which the NATO expanders themselves knew was absolutely intolerable and was sure to set off a violent conflict if, quote, we don't handle this very, very carefully, which then they didn't, and which led to this horrific war. And then there was also the threat that America would install these supposed defensive missile interceptors, which even on the face of it as defensive missiles, this can be part of a first strike capability, canceling mutually assured destruction and gaining the ability, potentially, to destroy so many Russian nukes on an American first strike, and then being able to shoot down any remaining retaliatory response that they would have, that we then gain what's called first strike capability to launch an aggressive nuclear war and win it and not have to face mutually assured destruction ourselves. Then on top of that, these Sparrow defensive missiles are fired from the Mark 41 missile launcher, which is a dual-use launcher that can host Tomahawk cruise missiles, which can be tipped with H-bombs. And now, especially that Donald Trump tore up the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty of 1987 back in 2020, now that would be illegal even for America to tip Tomahawk cruise missiles with H-bombs. And so as Vladimir Putin said in his declaration of war, this is a flight time of 10 minutes to Moscow. It's like a knife at our throat, and we're not going to tolerate it, and that's it. We told the Americans, sign a treaty saying you won't do this. We'll believe you if you just put it in writing, but America won't put it in writing. So it's on. That's it. Now, I disagree with the decision to launch the invasion, or to the escalation is a fair way to call it, in 2022. The book is called Provoked, not Justified, and I agree with it. And if you read in the book, I say that I don't think that Putin had no choice. I think his back was to the wall, but not necessarily in the corner. And I think that there were other alternatives short of full-scale war. Well, not full-scale, but whatever, the vastly increased war that he launched at that time. But it's just an absolutely absurd lie that he did it for no reason, that the Americans hadn't done a damn thing to make the Russians concerned for their security position in the whatever, on their southern and southwestern border there. It's just absolute nonsense. As I quote in the book, the hawks, the NATO expanders themselves, including Zbigniew Brzezinski and Henry Kissinger, the two most important American foreign policy grand strategists of the last 50 years, both said, hey, listen now, we're going to expand NATO. Of course, we have to come up with a special dispensation for Ukraine. We have to make sure that instead of having a fight with Russia over Ukraine, that we make it a bridge between East and West. We ensconce permanent neutrality, just like we had to deal with the Soviet Union over Austria in the first Cold War with the commies, where Austria was not part of the Warsaw Pact and it was not part of NATO. And it was under Soviet occupation at first, but they left by the end of the 50s. And then Austria maintained their independence from both sides as a bridge between East and West throughout the Cold War. Well, why can't we do that now? That's what Brzezinski and Kissinger even said. And then guess what? They did not do that. Instead, they pushed and pushed and pushed. They overthrew the government in Kiev twice in 10 years when the wrong guy kept winning the popular vote there, and forced this war. And so Mr. Brazilian YouTube guy either knows nothing about this or he's a liar. But I don't know which is the better excuse, whichever you prefer, whichever is the better excuse, right? The guy either has no idea what he's talking about while he's talking, or he's completely dishonest and a plant, either knowingly or helplessly regurgitating CIA propaganda.
Yeah, that's his sport.
How embarrassing. God. Can you imagine being that guy's father? What a disgrace.
Yeah, he's old now. He has sons, and it's
Can you
terrible.
imagine being that guy's son? What an embarrassment. Jeez.
Yeah, you're
Sorry.
right.
I like picking on Warhawks. They're always such fools. I just got no regard for them.
No, and he calls himself an anarcocapitalist, and it's a heavy hit for our work here in Brazil, because we work to promote the ideas of freedom, and he jeopardizes our work. So he works against that, bringing people to have these.
Well, look, you mentioned it. You said, who are the libertarians? Who sets the standard for what's libertarianism? You already answered it. It's Ron Paul and Lew Rockwell, the Mises Institute, the Libertarian Institute, antiwar.com. This is the home base of all libertarianism in the world. So you don't get to be a war hawk and then call yourself that. Look, you mentioned Walter Block. Walter Block, horrible on Zionism, and came out in favor of Israel's horrific slaughter of the Palestinians. And you know what happened? I know you know what happened. Lew Rockwell, actually, I did it first on the Tom Woods show, but then Lew Rockwell and Hans Hoppe excommunicated his sorry ass and told him, we never knew you. And we take back that you were ever even friends with dead old Rothbard. Beat it, scum. And they kicked him to the curb where he belongs. Because why? Because he's a hawk. And because he's trafficking in a bunch of crap that's not true as an excuse for supporting killing people. Well, so you know why you're not a libertarianism? Why you're not a libertarian? Because I said so. That's why. Beat it. And same thing. And when Lew Rockwell runs Hans Hoppe at the top of the page and says, Walter Block, we never knew you. Get lost. Don't ever come back. That's definitive. You know who gets to decide? Lew Rockwell gets to decide. And he would say the same thing about this chump down here pushing Russian war propaganda here. You want to know what's going on in foreign policy? Ask Daniel McAdams, Ron Paul's right-hand man on the Liberty Report. He'll tell you who's killing who and who's telling what lie. You won't be left confused about what the libertarians think or know about any of this stuff.
Yeah. He definitely never read antiwar.com as well. So this is a shame. It's a shame that he calls himself a libertarian. He doesn't read our website, which is supposed to be the beacon of liberty in Brazil, where we promote lots of articles from antiwar.com, from Ron Paul, from Lew Rockwell. And we've been doing that for almost 20 years now. And it's a shame that Brazilians still look for a beacon, not ours, because we didn't gain anything. We are not popular in Brazil. On the contrary, we just lost lots of things in the way of doing this, but we do it anyway. We just, we are slaves of the arguments, the slaves of the truth, and we are in this for freedom, for
That's
sure.
right. Hey, don't give up, man. You know, there's a time not long ago at all where, you know, me and all my friends and associates, we're basically just doing our best to make libertarianism as a movement as good as we can. And, you know, try to be available to everyone else too. Just keep teaching people the truth about liberty and whatever. And then we found before very long that, well, other people found us. And people who lean much further to the right or to the left from us, they respect the libertarians as the people who are the best on especially foreign policy, but on a lot of other stuff too. Price inflation. Nobody even understands what inflation is other than Austrians. Anyone else will tell you it's just when prices go up. No, dude. Only we know what we're talking about on that. Even the Chicago school are a bunch of kooks on inflation. Only the Austrians are right about this. So this is Ron Paul's great advice to me. You just keep telling the truth and you just keep teaching people about liberty, and you never really know what's going to happen. And as we found more and more in this country, people who are not libertarians at all and don't even feel necessarily pressure to become libertarians anyway necessarily, they still turn to us when they want to know what the hell is going on around here, because they know that we know. And so, you know, our footprint is getting bigger and bigger overall in American society, just because who else are you going to turn to when prices are up and up and up and another crash is threatening? Who can explain what's going on except for the libertarians? When the last 3 wars lead to the next one, who else can explain what's going on except for the libertarians? And it's going to be the same thing with you guys. You talk about, man, these price controls aren't going to work. These tariffs aren't going to work. This intervention in the economy. Now you're raising taxes. Do you know what that's going to do? You're the only ones who are right. You're the only ones who know what you're talking about. So stick to that, and you'll find before very long that you're in the lead and everybody else is following you.
Yeah, same happened with COVID as well, when we were the only ones right against everyone. That was really brave of us to publish all the articles we did since the beginning. Thank you, and thank you also, Dave Smith, and for being so right about that and brave to speak about everything that you speak. And now I see that it's a miracle and it's a blessing that you both are very popular in the US, and that now I've seen on your last appearances that you always try to shift to the economics. So the talks, so not only keep focusing on the war side, because of course it's the most evident crime that states commit, but it all comes from the economics, from the monetary policy and stuff like that. And I see you pushing this subject on your appearances, and this is amazing. And also Dave also is trying to do that. And we should always push for the ethics of the things and bring the libertarian principle to the broad masses. And this is what I believe we try to do every time we have a chance. And going back for the Walter Block, also, I currently live in BC. I'm here on vacation in Brazil. My brothers still live here. They run the institute with me. I run more the social media. Fernando, my brother, he writes a lot, and he is the editor and the translator. Cristiano is more a public figure, and he goes to some not mainstream, but very famous right-wing channels where he sometimes speaks as a commentarist. So we do that. But I live in BC, and Walter Block is also always there, and I used to go to all his events, and since that I could not stand to see his face anymore. It's a shame what he became, and it's unimaginable. When I was first reading about libertarianism, and we had him here in Brazil as well. It was a very proud moment for us to meet him and to have him speaking. He was great on his speeches, but it's sad. It's just sad.
Well, look, I mean, if you become committed to Zionism, you will become a deranged maniac, because that's the only way to be a Zionist. So he made his
and he was supposed to be Rothbard's friend, and Rothbard already had the explanation that he hates all states, but probably no state was as bad as the Israeli state in our lifetime.
Yeah, Rothbard absolutely was against Zionism, and when he endorsed H.W. Bush, after H.W. Bush did the Iraq War, the first Iraq War, Rothbard still endorsed him in the Los Angeles Times, and he wrote, well, at least he hates Yitzhak Shamir. That was his rationalization for Bush, was that he was so waspy that he hated Israel.
Yeah. Okay, we can go back to the libertarian movement and later if we have time, but I think it's still about the libertarian movement, everything here that we talk, but I would like to move this talk to Argentina, because there we have the real anarcocapitalist. No,
I don't know enough about that guy. You just have to tell me about him, but I see him palling around with Netanyahu, so he's just Walter Block to me. I don't respect the guy at all, but you tell me.
Yeah, that's part of my question, but I would suggest you and your audience and everybody who speaks English or Portuguese to read our articles, or Oscar Grau articles. He lives in Paraguay, but he writes very well, and he demolishes Milei in every way. And you should read his articles. He is published in the Mises Institute and New Rockwell. Even Hans Hammerhofer revised some of his articles, and we published.
What's the guy's name again?
Oscar Grau. Oscar Grau.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
I haven't kept up with him, but I know who you mean, though. Great
writer, and he's the one. If you want to understand Millet, read him. It's demolishing. Anyway, he'll tell you. But I'd like to know. I'll talk about, but I'd like to know your impression of Javier Millet, and I'll give you just a brief something here. Even before being elected, he publicly positioned himself as an ally of the American empire in favor of Israel and Ukraine, praising Netanyahu and Zelensky as heroes, expressing interest in joining NATO, and spending money on military aircraft despite claiming there is no money for the poor. In your view, is it possible to maintain a consistent libertarian stance while unconditionally supporting aggressive military and foreign policies? So first, your impression about Millet, and then you can go.
Well, look, I mean, he seems like kind of a nut to me, but I don't know. I don't speak Spanish, and I really am just the worst on Latin American stuff. I just don't know shit about it, honestly. I think if I was trying to be charitable to him, I would say that if he's trying to come to power, then yeah, he has to, as you were saying about Brazil, he has to kiss up to the United States or they'll kill him, right? Like he's got to be a good boy. And then, so if what they want is for him to say very nice things about Israel and Ukraine, I could see him just saying, fine, okay, I have to do that because I have this other agenda that I want to do. And so those are the cards I'm dealt and I got to play them. Fine. But he seems really sincere, right? Like, he seems really into it. And that casts a lot of doubt on like who he really is and what he really means. When he says that we got to get rid of rent control and we got to get rid of all price controls and we've got to whoop inflation and we've got to protect property rights. We've got to help encourage real capitalism in the country. All that sounds exactly right. I don't know what he's doing policy-wise to really make that true. I mean, you'd have to really fire a hell of a lot of government employees, which I know they have, massive bureaucracy there and massive labor unions for all the government goons and all of that. And whatever. I don't know anything really about the state of their economy in the first place. How bad their housing crisis is that they need to abolish all this zoning and all these controls in order to allow it to flourish. For all I know, everything's fine in the first place, or it's the worst housing crisis anywhere on the planet or where. I really don't know what he's up against there. I know that government employees are essentially impossible to deal with. As far as like, if you were you and you got elected anywhere in the world and you had to get rid of these so-called civil servants, right? Like they'll drown you first, right? They will win, not you. So, so that's like giving the guy the benefit of the doubt. That's not knowing anything about the guy, but saying, well, he sounds like a libertarian to me. He wants to roll back the government as much as he can to unleash private actors to do whatever they can or whatever. That all sounds fine. But again, we're talking about a weak state in a world of the American empire where, for all I know, all this talk about private property is all just window dressing for letting American multinationals come in and steal all their fresh water and copper out of the ground. I don't know. And that, you know what I mean? That's not protecting the private property rights of the people of Argentina. That's just being a corporate mascot, monkey boy, sock puppet, allowing much greater powers to get away with whatever they want, which is, pretty typical, not even necessarily for any particular kind of leader. But that's, the game of the economic hitman. This is all in The Creature from Jekyll Island by Edward Griffin way back in the 90s. And then the economic hitman, John Perkins, wrote about this in the 2000s, that what the Americans like to do is they come in and they go, look, man, we'll give you a really good loan. We'll give you a really good deal. They bribe the president and his friends into accepting a loan that they can never pay back. But they get to keep their cut and put it in a Swiss bank account and whatever. Buy a Mercedes, they're fine. But then the country can't pay back the debt. So, oh no, you're in default. Well, we'll just take all your resources then. And that's the imperial scam. So that's the default. again, I don't know enough about Argentina to say, but I'm always going to be suspicious. And honestly, man, I think this was a thing in Brazil and elsewhere in South America, but I'm not sure where all. I'm just the worst on this stuff, I swear. But I've seen where there's massive protests and the signs say less Marx, more Mises. And I immediately, like all libertarians, I go, yeah, more Mises. Wow. Like, they're not saying more Milton Friedman. They're saying more Mises. All right, you know? But then I'm like, wait a minute. That sounds like something a horrible, evil sock puppet liar would say if this was some big fake AstroTurf thing by the world empire. They know that the kids, they love Mises these days, and so they put his name on the placard. But who paid to get those signs made? That's the real question. You know what I mean? And so it's just like with anything. When you're reading an article and it's from the point of view of somebody who agrees with you, and it's exposing the evil of people that you're already against, well, you have to read that article with twice the skepticism that you would apply to an article coming even from your enemies, because you don't want to get caught up just with your bias, believing what you want. You got to believe only what you have to, because you got no choice, because all the other options have been discarded. And this is by process of elimination. This has got to be the truth. You don't want to go having faith in just earthly stuff. You know what I mean? Hold your horses, make sure you're right. And so when I see people protesting for libertarianism, I go, all right, well, now I want to know more about what's really going on here, who these people are, whose interests they really represent, which public relations firm came up with that slogan, and whether they've ever even heard of Lew Rockwell, much less whether they believe in the same things that we all know that he believes in, which is, you know, our libertarian movement.
It's amazing that you mentioned this poster with less Marx and more Mises, because the guy who printed those and they popularized them on the protests is the same guy who stole our Instituto Mises Brasil, the benefactor who wanted us not to discuss secession, who didn't want us to, who didn't want the oil company to be privatized or denationalized, and it's the same guy. Milei, I think his government can be explained in a way. So he ran as an anarcho-capitalist. His speech, his campaign was pristine anarcho-capitalist, and that was the best thing he did. He put our discourse in the mouth of the population of Argentina. In spontaneous interviews in the street, Argentina TV would interview anybody passing by, and they would talk just like you and me about monetary policy. So that was something that he has on his favor. Amazing, great work. Thank you. The day after he was elected, I think he flew to US, and I thought, oh my God, he's going to US. Maybe he's going to see Lew Rockwell or Ron Paul or visit the Mises Institute. No. You know who is the first person he went to visit?
No.
Bill Clinton and a rabbi.
Bill Clinton and who?
One rabbi.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who's that?
A rabbi.
A rabbi.
A rabbi, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Bill Clinton was over at the rabbi's house. They were sharing some kids between them, or what?
I don't know. I don't know what they have on him, but since then, he's not the same libertarian, I can tell. Yes, he changed.
He went in there and he doesn't remember much after that, but they showed him a bunch of pictures.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But yes, okay, let's run here to another question. This time I'll change to another continent, and let's do the next question. Considering that the memory of the Holocaust is often mobilized by authorities and supporters of the State of Israel as the primary moral justification for present-day acts of aggression, don't you think it's important to pursue a critical examination of the official Holocaust narrative. In the same way, it was crucial to question the official Western narratives on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the US invasion of Iraq, and the official medical narrative during COVID, to break consensus and expose contradictions. Motivations matter. Even if most people don't identify as libertarians, warmongers are always concerned with justifying their aggressions as legitimate responses to past acts or imminent threats.
Well, I mean, first of all, question whatever you want. And yeah, although I don't think there's probably too much mystery to what really went on there. I mean, I think, upwards of 2 million people had been killed just in Ukraine and the Baltic states and Belarus before they even really opened up the worst of the death camps. And I know more about the Holocaust in the Far East, the further East, rather, more than about what all happened in Poland and all of that, which I've never really studied in that much detail. But I would say that as cynical as it is the way they invoke the Holocaust all the time, I guess I would disagree with, my simple answer to your question would be no. I don't think that, that bringing that up and like, let's say you prove that it was half the number that they said it was or whatever. I don't think that's going to help anyone make an argument against what Israel is doing in Palestine now. First of all, they would just shriek and scream and say that you just hate Jews. And that's the only reason you're asking that question in the first place or whatever. And then secondly, I don't think people really invoking the Holocaust to justify, other than like in the most superficial way, to justify what they're doing to the Palestinians in Gaza now, they invoke October the 7th, right? They invoke the Holocaust for why there gets to be an Israel in the first place, right? Zionism was a sort of mostly failed project before the Second World War. But after the Second World War, they said, okay, because of the Holocaust, we'll let the European Jews go to Palestine then and have their state. That was over a long time ago. That was, in the 1940s. And I think as far as it goes, that's all just a fait accompli. That's just done. It's not quite, but might as well be ancient history. I think that probably 95% of the controversy now is over the occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and the brutality inflicted upon the Palestinians who still live there. In the West Bank and Gaza, rather than anything about the existence of Israel within its, 1948 borders through 67 borders, if you take my meaning. So I think, honestly, the best argument about all against what they're doing to me is to simply explain the facts of who's occupying who's retaliating against who and what. I don't know how it is in Brazil, but I know in the United States, people really think that the Palestinians are occupying the Israelis. Poor Israelis, right? And they just don't know anything about it. And if you stop and tell them, no, see, Palestinians, it sounds like they have a country because everybody has a country. You call them Palestinians, it sounds like they're from Palestine. Like that's the country next door and Israel's at war with Palestine. But there is no Palestine because Israel's on top of it. And those people in the Gaza Strip are refugees. Not 80% of them are from what we now call Israel proper and inside those old borders. Again, yes, justified by the Holocaust in the Second World War. But once you explain to people that actually the Israelis are the aggressors in this unremitting fashion all these years, then people turn on Israel immediately. Public opinion changes immediately. There was an old skit on the Daily Show on the Comedy Channel back probably in the 2008 war, maybe, because, they do this all the time, the Israelis. But like, I think it was in the 2008 war, but there's a guy reporting from Gaza and he's wearing a helmet and he's got his bulletproof vest on that says press on it. And there's explosions. And the guy is literally terrified out of his mind. You can tell the guy is terrified, right? And then on the split screen, it was like from CNN or Fox, I guess was the original thing. And on the split screen is the reporter from the Israeli side of the war. And he's wearing a pink polo shirt. And he's going, yeah, everybody's running for shelter because of the rockets coming over the wall or whatever. But it's a joke. Nobody thinks the Israelis are in danger. In fact, I think in that war, one rocket hit an apartment and killed one kid. was the entire, which is horrible, but was the entire Israeli side of the casualties in that one, while they're killing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Palestinians. And so it's just, and Jon Stewart, who's a Jewish Zionist, a liberal Zionist, is looking at this and going, oh my God, man, like the contrast here is just undeniable of who is occupying who is killing who. There was that funny comedian, Bassem Youssef. He goes, yeah, this is the first case in history where the occupied and oppressed have total air superiority over their enslavers, right? And carpet bomb them, you know, at no risk to themselves, you know, have total dominance over their oppressors. Yeah, right. So yeah, I don't know. And I don't know how it is in Brazil. See, it's a funny thing, man. For people who know history, America fought against Germany in the Second World War, right? We helped destroy the Nazi power in alliance with Britain and the Soviet Union that was doing this to the Jewish people in the Second World War. And yet, somehow in America, if anyone brings this subject up at all, it's as though you are a German trying to rehabilitate the Nazi party. And that's the way everyone kind of always takes it. It's like this most taboo subject or something like that, which is silly. And I'm not for that. And, you know, in Europe, it's illegal to question the thing. Now, as far as I know, in Brazil, if you brought up what really happened in Eastern Europe to the Jews in the Second World War, that might not be any more controversial than bringing up any other historical topic. I don't know. In America, it's basically suicide for your argument, right? It shuts the argument down, you know, against you. And then again, I think, you know, my basic understanding is there probably ain't too much to find there. I mean, for example, and this is, I haven't done, again, I admit I have not done all this work, you know, myself. But if you take, for example, Norman Finkelstein, who his parents were both in the concentration camps in Poland at the time. His mother survived Auschwitz. And he came home, and he's the guy who wrote the book, The Holocaust Industry, about how the Israel lobby exploits the Holocaust in order to, you know, shut down dissent and all of that. And he went through and he did a survey of all of the best Holocaust historians. And he said it was like 5,800,000 or something like that, at least. And there are other, I know there have been historians that have come out since the fall of the Soviet Union who have found even more massacres and even more mass killing in the East that the Soviets had basically covered up. The Soviets, after the end of the war, didn't have any special interest in highlighting explicitly anti-Jewish massacres. They were more interested in just saying, oh, woe is us, we lost this many million fighting the Nazis, but they weren't explicitly interested in focusing on anti-Jewish horrors in the East. So a lot of the historians are finding and have found even more than they knew of what was happening in what became the Warsaw Pact states, you know, in Soviet-dominated Eastern Europe after the war. So if it was, well, I don't know, like how low would the number have to be before now it's less legitimate for Israel to do to the people of Gaza what they're doing? And you know what I mean? Like, I'm not convinced that would be necessarily productive, since that was your question. But by all means, if you want to look into it and let me know what you find, fine. You know, I'm not, it's not a taboo to me, but I'm just saying that's kind of the way people treat it.
I'll send you some readings just to justify the question. The importance, I think many things that you say about the Russia, Ukraine might be seen as unimportant because you can make your argument by other ways, just by pointing out some facts from now before going back to 2014, for example. You can say some things that are closer to our history and don't matter about that. And same for COVID, just private property, so you don't need to go to the PCR tests or the vaccines or the mask doesn't work because of these or that scientific finds. That might be seen as a minor detail, but it was everything that we talked about you on your book, on your work on Russia, the fake history about Russia, and we did about COVID, and we do about the invasion of Iraq or Afghanistan. The minor details there, they make the difference when you go to make your case. So I believe that would be really important for everyone to go through all their arguments and demolish one by one. And that one is one that showed that they lie about numbers, and they will use that to justify some. I believe the occupation, even today, is justified by what happened there. Oh, we are poor. People are. They expelled us from our countries and they genocide us there. When I can send you some readings later. I'll do that for you, and then hopefully
I guess
you
I
get
could
to
mention,
go deep on that, because it's not crucial as you say, but I think it's important.
Yeah, look, I could mention I have read some revisionist stuff about it that was very unimpressive, and it's almost, and I don't mean to say this as a blanket statement, but it's almost impossible to find a Holocaust denier whose point is not that they wish it had happened and they'd like for there to be one now, right? I mean, show me a Holocaust denier who's like, oh yeah, no, Jews are great and everything, and whatever, but I'm just saying, like, I'm a stickler for details. It's not really like that. And in fact, a lot of times it's just completely bogus arguments where, and there's always truthers who love to take on everything. I'm an Oklahoma City bombing truther, for example. And I'll tell you right now, it was a bunch of neo-Nazis who did it, and they got away with it because they were undercover FBI informants and already flipped state's witnesses. And so the FBI had all the information they needed to stop the attack, and they didn't. They may have even deliberately provoked it. I'm not sure. But guess what? There's all kinds of conspiracy theories about Oklahoma that are total crap, about how the Arabs did it, Saddam Hussein did it, Osama bin Laden did it. There's this one guy named Kerry Gagan from Colorado who will go on and talk to you all day about Oklahoma City, and every single thing he says is a lie. Oh, it was the military who built the bomb in this parking garage, and just whatever, man. They just come up with anything. And I've seen arguments about the gas chambers, like, oh yeah, but the door opens the wrong way. Oh yeah? You ever think maybe there was a guard standing at the door, dude? Oh no, the door opens the wrong way. That's so conclusive. And that's the kind of thing where someone who is actually not a historian, but someone who's just trying to disprove the Holocaust will glom on to any damn thing. And that's not impressive to me. You know what I mean? And like even, well, whatever. There's
that goes both ways, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Most people want to prove it, and less people want to disprove it. That's why you see less historians going one way other than the other. It's very unpopular to disprove it, and it's okay to prove it. But it's true
that there have been many people who have embellished their story or even made up their own story of what happened in it. But I don't think that the overall historical consensus on it came from just individual rumors of somebody who came up with the craziest thing that Joseph Mengele supposedly ever did or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like,
there's truth in that.
I mean, even the soap, even the thing about the soap, Jews didn't make that up. The Nazis made that up and told Jews in the concentration camps, yeah, you see this bar of soap? We made this out of you, whatever. That's where that came from. So it wasn't really true, but it was something that they were told at various times and places and in different places, in the camps at that time. That's where that rumor came from. So, and again, the most that I've read about the Holocaust is about what happened in Ukraine, and then also in Belarus and in the Baltics, and what they called the Holocaust of bullets, where they were at something like 800,000 dead just in Ukraine. And that was before they built the big camps in Poland. And then if you include the Baltics and Belarus, that was supposed to be something like 2 million right there. And that was based on not the deepest research. I can go to the university library and just dive, but I read 5 or 6 books about World War II in Ukraine while I was writing my book about Ukraine. And I covered the Holodomor, and then I covered the Ukrainians who sided with the Nazis when the Nazis came to force the commies out, and then the aftermath of when the commies came back again and forced the Germans out, and all of the rest of that. And so it didn't seem to be controversial at all that the Germans were rounding up Jews in Ukraine and murdering them anywhere they could find them.
Yeah, and Christians. Okay.
And why would they do that? Why would they do that? Because they were avowedly the most anti-Semitic regime in the history of the world. And Adolf Hitler had vowed, if America enters the war, I'm going to kill every last Jew. He said that. I don't know if that's the exact quote, but he said, I'm going to kill European Jewry. He was holding them hostage. If you read the book Human Smoke by Nicholas Baker, he says, if America enters the war, Europe's Jews are dead. And then America entered the war. You know,
and doesn't matter how many Christians I have to kill in order to do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, and in fact, how many Christians did he kill? There's something like 27 million Soviets died. 27 million Soviets, and I don't know how many millions of Germans died. All of them Christians.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and when we don't get a state for us because of that. It's okay.
Yeah, millions of Chinese died in the thing too.
Yes. Japanese and Koreans. It was a massacre.
It was 60 million overall.
Yeah. I know. It's terrible. Wars.
And okay, does that really sound so crazy? If you had 27 to 30 million people killed on the Eastern Front in the German war against the Soviets. And why are the numbers that high on the Soviet side? You know why? This is total blitzkrieg against the civilian populations everywhere they went. 27, 30 million people. But you're telling me that you'd be surprised if they had set about to massacre the people they hated the most, who they absolutely had no intention of caring for, or, right? Like, of course they killed them.
Yeah, that's why it's important to debate and going deep on that, because then we can have more informed discussions regarding that, and maybe we can either prove or disprove an argument. That's why I think it's really important. Like it is your job on Russia, our job on COVID, even going through small things like mass work or don't.
More about that.
Everything needs to be considered. Every argument needs to be.
Let me say one more thing about that, which because I do plead guilty for not having done all this work myself. I'm sort of just relying on other people that I know and the deep research that they've done. But my friend William Norman Grigg, who was the editor of the New American magazine, he went back and forth in letters to the editor and editorials with David Irving in the New American back in the 1990s and destroyed him. I remember reading it. David Irving wrote to him, and then Will Grigg wrote back, and they went back and forth 4 or 5 times, and Will Grigg absolutely won that exchange. And he is a good friend of mine. My other friend, Anthony Gregory, had done deep research on the thing, and he thinks it was more than 6. He thinks it was more than 6 million who had died. Essentially, the Soviets had played it down, and that it turns out that it was even more people than that, more Jews who had been killed. And then also my friend Sheldon Richman, he calls himself a former Jew. He's not even just no longer a Zionist. He doesn't even consider himself Jewish because he doesn't believe in the religion, and he doesn't believe Jewishness is an ethnicity at all. So even though his folk come from, Ashkenazim in Eastern Europe, he's totally in rejection of that. He wrote the great book Coming to Palestine, and he did his own deep dive on the Holocaust to see whether they were lying or not. He wasn't afraid of any kind of taboo. He went to go and see. And the part he told me about was about David Irving's humiliation at his trial in England, where he was suing this Deborah Lipstadt, the Holocaust historian, for libel. And then she humiliated him on the stand. And he could not stand by his idiot assertions about whatever the doors of the gas chamber, the hatch in the roof, or whatever silly thing it was, the stains on the walls. It wasn't the stains were not the right kind of stains for the amount of Zyklon B that supposedly was in there, and all these kind of arguments. And on the stand, he melted down. On the stand, he lost. And it wasn't just, it was a rigged game. It was that he actually could not back up his thing. And one more is my friend Ryan Dawson. And He's a click to the right of me, and man, he hates Israel, dude. He absolutely hates Israel, and he's willing to go, to me, too far using the J word in like a mean kind of a way, in a way that I don't, you know? And he's looked into the Holocaust, and he fought with these guys, and he argued with them that they're just stupid and sloppy and wrong. They go, there's no way that they gassed all these people in this building. And then Dawson says, yeah, but nobody said it was in that building, stupid. It was in that building and that building and that building over there. So these people are debunking what they don't even know what they're talking about. And so here's a guy who, believe me, man, I know Ryan Dawson. If he thought he could poke holes in all this Holocaust stuff, he'd be poking them. And instead he looks at it and he goes, and this is, believe me, this is not like for political correct reasons. It's because he looks at this and he goes, no, dude, these debunkers, they ain't debunking shit, right? Now, this is a guy who believes Israel did 9/11 and is probably the closest to proving it of anybody, right? But he's also willing to, for example, debunk Candace Owens on the Charlie Kirk stuff because he just thinks that it ain't right. You know what I mean? He's loyal to his own beliefs, his own opinions, his own conclusions. He's not swayed by like pressure to fit in with whatever crowd or anything like that. And he hates Israel, dude, so much. So is that kind of a cheap excuse for me not reading 100 books about it? Maybe. But I think Ryan Dawson, if there was a real problem with those numbers, I'd have heard it from him already.
Yeah, it's okay to tertiarize sometimes research. Yeah, our time is scarce. I understand you. And you have great people there to trust. But even though I'll try to send you a reading or two,
Sure.
Not much, recommended by Rothbard and Hoffman. So maybe you enjoyed the reading. Okay, just changing the subject again, let's go back to South America. And so Venezuela. What practical elements of an alternative diplomatic, non-coercive U.S. foreign policy could realistically be adopted today to reduce tensions and avoid military conflict? Other, I think, than the best libertarian solution, just march out, don't do it, get out. What else do you think could be done on a diplomatic or non-coercive U.S. foreign policy?
All right. Well, look, all other things being equal here, and you're not just doing the Ron Paul thing, America's differences with Venezuela are minor. As Donald Trump said in the Oval Office just a few weeks ago, he offered everything. That is Maduro. He offered everything. And the F word got the news headline because Trump said, because he knows not to F with the United States of America. But what he said before that was he offered everything. In other words, unconditional surrender. What are your terms? You want our oil? Fine, you can have it. So it's just like Japan in the Second World War. They're just holding on to the emperor, right? He doesn't want to step down. That's the one condition that they won't accept. Well, I just don't give a goddamn about Venezuela. Let them fucking starve. Honestly, I don't care. I don't care at all. I don't. So if Maduro stays the president until he dies of old age, boo-hoo for the people of Venezuela. Maybe they ought to do something about it or something. But what can America do? Sorry, I was supposed to accept the premise that America's supposed to do something. Okay, tell him, listen, we won't kill you if you kick Hezbollah out. And we won't kill you if you just go ahead and continue to get along with Chevron, just like you always have for the last 30 years straight with no problems. And we'll leave you alone. Don't change your Chevron policy. Do change your Hezbollah policy. Done. And you get to stay in office and we won't zap you with a drone strike.
The problem is that they say, oh, stop sending fentanyl, and they don't do it. So they say, I can't because they don't. So yeah, I'll kill you anyway.
Yeah, and stop shipping all that high quality weed to Texas too, even though that wasn't you either.
Yeah, they would have to nuke British Columbia if they want to get rid of good weed.
I know. But yeah, no, that's the thing. I'm sorry. Look, I don't mean to be cruel. I do care about the people of Venezuela as much as I care about any old human anywhere that you find one. I care about you guys down there in Brazil. I don't want anything bad to happen to you. But I'm supposed to care enough that now I transfer my care to the responsibility of my government to determine your destiny. It ain't right. It's just crazy. It's just
just take the milk out of your kid's mouth to change the dictators in Brazil or Venezuela. This is crazy. Or bomb kids in Gaza or Afghanistan.
You know what I'd like to see? You know what I'd like to see? I would like to see America pull all of our troops home, lift all sanctions on every person in every nation, every company everywhere, all over the world, all of it, and all of the empire. And then maybe take like 6 months break, kind of rest, let things cool down a little. And then, hell, they could just hire me to do the job and we'll just insult everyone for being such stupid commies or being such backwards Wahhabists or whatever their stupid problem is. And we'll just make fun of them all. Hey, you Taliban. Hey, you Pashtuns of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Guess what everyone else in the world figured out? You're supposed to date each other's sisters, not each other's sons. What in the hell is the matter with you people? We are all laughing at you. We are all mocking you for not figuring out how to have sex right. You stupid idiot Pashtuns, right? I could do that all day. But you know what? I can't really do that with a straight face when the very worst thing about Pashtun society is my government mass murdering them, blasting them to bits with high-powered explosives dropped from the sky. Sorry. Yeah, I actually am the worst thing about Pashtun culture right now.
You call them barbarians.
Give me a minute. Yeah, give me a minute of not killing them for a while. And then I can get to making fun of them. Right? Same thing for the Somalis. The worst thing about Somalia, this is anywhere in the world, I guess the Kurds do this too. East Africans and the Kurds do female circumcision, otherwise known as female genital mutilation. It's the sickest practice in the world. Except, you know what's the worst thing about Somalia? George W. Bush and Barack Obama and Donald Trump and Joe Biden and their men. You know how many Somalis they've killed since 2001? Hundreds of thousands. And they're still losing. It's in the headlines on antiwar.com today. Sock puppet government loses another town to the insurgency again. That's after 24 years of this.
Yeah.
Okay, we've done nothing but kill people and lose in Somalia. So what's worse? Somali female genital mutilation or the United States of America? You can go on and on and on. Same thing about the Kurds. Same thing about the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia. Same thing about in Pakistan. If you try to convert to Christianity, they'll cut your head off or stone you to death. Don't you think it'd be fun? I think it would be fun if all the Americans and all the Brits and all the Brazilians and all the Japanese, if we all just pointed and laughed at the Pakistanis and ridiculed them, that their penises are so tiny and pathetic that they're afraid. Their manhood is so fragile, like a little trans girl, that if someone changes their religion, that it's a threat to their own faith. Boy, they must not even really believe in Muhammad very much at all. If they're that threatened, if someone else changes their religion, what a bunch of fags, the Pakistanis. Ha ha, weaklings. And then we just ridicule them until they stop stoning people to death for changing their religion. Instead of, carpet bombing them into becoming more like us, which doesn't seem to really take very well.
Yeah, great point. We should exercise more freedom of criticizing others' religions. yes, and others ways of life, others barbaric rituals. Yeah, we should do that more often while we can, because things are getting, the dictatorships around the world are getting more powerful, and they're taking even that right out of us, at least us that don't have the First Amendment.
Right.
Not that this is very respected in the US.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much longer we're going to have the First Amendment here, bud, but they're threatening it every day.
Yeah. Okay, Scott, I know we are running out of time, and I would like to give you enough time for you to explain to the Brazilian audience about your new enterprise, which is the Scott Horton Academy. It's great. I want to get part of it. I missed that. I missed the Black Friday promotion. That was. I would like you to do your pitch for the Brazilian audience to see if somebody can have an enlightenment and listen more to you and the ideas of the people that you are surrounding yourself with. It's brilliant. I've been reading about the content that you are going to bring and you are already bringing. And I've been very excited about that. I will be a part of that as soon as I can get. But please talk about this project.
Sure. Well, thank you. Yes, it's at scotthortonacademy.com, and just use promo code Christmas20 and you'll save 20%. We got annual subscriptions or lifetime subscriptions. And what it is essentially it's long form courses by me and other associates on the Middle East. In fact, later today, we'll be posting the first half of my course on the new Cold War with Russia, which the first half of it is 30 hours long. So see what you get out of that. And my whole terror war course is also about 30 hours long. But then I've got great courses on Israel-Palestine, on the domestic police state, on American, broad take on American foreign policy since the Second World War. And then I've got a new guy, Adam Francisco, who's a Lutheran scholar who has done this great work debunking Christian Zionism and the supposed mandate of modern day Christians to support the state of Israel. And then we're going to be adding new ones all the time too, including a course by C.J. Kilmer on how Woodrow Wilson is the worst person who ever lived. And Bob Murphy's going to be doing one on the New Deal, the Great Depression and the New Deal, and all kinds of stuff. It's just really great. And so Tom Woods complains that I talk too fast and I cover too much ground in too short a time. So this is Scott Horton slowed down so that everybody can catch up. So that's what it is. So it's scotthortonacademy.com. And again, use the promo code Christmas20 and you'll save 20%. And you practice speaking English.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, Priscilla was very insecure about her English. She did well in the presentation.
Oh, she did very well.
Yeah, I'd like her to come back, I believe.
You got that right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, because I have a brother, when I say, oh, excuse my English, they say, your English is much better than my Portuguese. And that, because most people that speak English, they don't speak other languages because they don't have to, right? Because everyone tries to speak English. And then they always admire people like you, Priscilla, and me, who do our best to speak their language. So never be sorry about trying. Okay.
The irony is that I speak Portuguese very well. So
the only thing I know how to say in Portuguese, I learned from my friend when I was a little boy, because he was, I guess, half Portuguese. He wasn't Brazilian, he was Portuguese, but he taught me how to say "muy loco cabeça." So that's me. That's all I know how to say in Portuguese.
Well,
I will teach you. Olá, tudo bem?
Olá, tudo what?
Tudo bem.
Tudo bem.
Tudo
Olá,
bem.
tudo bem.
Tudo bem, e você? I'm fine, and you?
We're going to have to practice when we're not live sometime.
Just say, no, if you say this, imposto é roubo.
Imposto é what?
Imposto é roubo.
Imposto en hobo?
Yeah, it's taxation is theft.
Oh, okay.
That's how you have to say. Imposto é Hobo.
Hobo. E posto
Yeah.
em hobo. All right.
Yeah, that's all you have to say. Not say mais Mises, menos Marx, mais Mises. That's better what you said there. Scott, it was an immense pleasure talking to you finally. I talked in my life with Hans Hermann Hoppe, with Tom Woods, and you name it. The person from Mises Institute. I was with Kinsella earlier this year, and other Bob Murphy. I talked to him, and it's incredible to finally speak with you. You're somebody who is as big as those guys in the movement, and it's a shame that we didn't talk before. I believe we can. Yeah, our paths will cross again, and hopefully we'll be as successful as you are on your enterprises. And I wish you all the best, not only on the academy, but also on the 2 institutes that you amazingly run. It's incredible the work you do. I would like to send my best to everyone on your institutes. I admire a lot Keith Knight and David Camp and everyone, Kylan Zalon, everyone that works with you, and they have the pleasure to work with you. It's really an honor to be finally with you. And
thank you very much. I don't deserve all that, but I appreciate that, and the guys sure do, and I appreciate it on their behalf too. And it's great to be with you guys again. Well, you again, and you for the first time.
And Rachel, don't forget Rachel, because I like her so much.
She's wonderful, isn't she?
Yes,
Absolutely.
she is.
Yeah. So I'd like to wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And next year, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.